Welcome to this explainer. I am so excited to have you here today. We're going to unpack a genuinely fascinating and deeply thought-provoking text by Karma Nayak that tackles, well, one of the most persistent issues in human history, socioeconomic inequality. Nayak's work challenges us to completely redefine what freedom actually means and proposes a highly specific, mathematical approach to governance and wealth distribution. It's a bold vision, attempting to bridge the gap between our symbolic celebrations and the actual daily economic struggles of ordinary people. So, we're going to break down the author's logic, look at the stark realities presented in the text, and explore this very unique mathematical model together.
Okay, let's take a quick look at our roadmap for today. We'll start with number 1, paper versus real independence. Then, number 2, the ground reality of recent claims. From there, we'll dive into number 3, the math of the 10-90-0 model. And finally, number 4, the 10 crore goal.
All right, section 1, paper versus real independence. Let's look at a really interesting garden analogy.
To explain a massive macroeconomic concept, the author uses an incredibly relatable analogy. Think about a family that officially owns a beautiful garden on paper, but in reality, only one person actually has the right to pick the fruit. The rest of the family? They just have to watch and hope for fruit to drop so they don't starve. That right there is what the text calls paper independence. Now contrast that with real independence, where every single family member has direct control and access to the garden's bounty. The core argument the author is making here is that true independence requires direct economic empowerment, not just legal, on-paper status. So the absolutely crucial point the source makes is that true freedom actually has to be felt in the daily economic lives of the people. As this quote perfectly captures, hoisting a flag and distributing sweets in a national holiday means very little if a citizen goes to sleep hungry or lacks basic health care and education. According to Nayak, without absolute economic security, the independence we celebrate is purely symbolic. It's just paper independence.
Moving right along to Section 2, ground reality. Let's start checking the claims.
Let's put some of these August 15, 2026 political claims under a microscope, just like the author does. First, there's the claim that 25 crore people escaped poverty. Well, the text counters this by asking a pretty logical question. If that's true, why do 80 crore people still rely on government rations while just 1% hold the bulk of the wealth? Next, regarding the promise of a developed India by 2047, the author notes that future promises offer absolutely zero relief to citizens drowning in debt today. Finally, the text points out the stark irony of honoring historical heroes like Birsa Munda and Jyotiba Phule, while the very resources they fought for, like water, forest, and land, are actively being handed over to corporate syndicates.
Which brings us to Section 3, the math of the 10-90-0 model. This is a complete systemic overhaul. First up in this mathematical model is the 10% rule. This represents the direct cash right from the national treasury to every single citizen. Now, you might be wondering if this is just another welfare program, but the author is very explicit here. This is not charity. It is not a handout. It is strictly positioned as a fundamental birthright. The goal of this direct 10% allocation is to permanently end the helplessness of poverty and ensure an absolute baseline of economic security for everyone.
Next is the 90. This represents a massive 90% slice of the physical wealth of the nation: property, land, mines, and trade resources. Under this model, 90% of these resources would be directly controlled by the producing society, the workers, and the indigenous populations who are actually doing the labor day and night. Essentially, it shifts the power of decision-making away from the 1% corporate syndicates and places the keys to the economy directly into the hands of the 90% who do the actual building and producing.
And finally, we reach the zero. The zero is a truly fascinating punitive mechanism in this model. It represents a strict mathematical rule, a 10 times penalty levied on exploiters who steal public wealth and hide it in offshore accounts. The explicit design of this rule is to completely crash the exploitative system entirely to zero. It's not just a slap on the wrist or a fine. It's literally an economic kill switch meant to permanently dismantle corrupt, wealth-hoarding infrastructures.
Because of these incredibly strict mathematical rules, Karma Nayak actually issues an open challenge to the world. The text argues that traditional religious charities preach goodness but totally lack a concrete mathematical formula to end poverty. It also argues that modern capitalism gave us democracy but completely failed to stop corporate syndicates from seizing resources. Therefore, the 10-90-0 model is presented not just as mere public policy, but as an extension of natural and cosmic justice.
It claims to protect humanity and the environment while eradicating poverty with 100% certainty. In fact, the author literally issues an open challenge to any scholar, machine, or constitution in the world to prove this mathematical model wrong.
Now for Section 4, the 10 crore goal. Let's talk about digital mobilization.
The author explicitly calls for a massive, subscriber-driven movement to make this reality. Step 1 focuses squarely on India. Karma Nayak demands 10 crore, that's 100 million subscribers to his channel. The moment that number is hit, he promises to demand the government actually implement the 1090 model. If they refuse, well, the plan is to use the sheer force of those 10 crore supporters to form a new government, pass an immediate ordinance, and amend the Constitution. But it doesn't even stop there. Step 2 scales this whole operation up globally. The author calls for 1 billion global subscribers. With that level of support, the goal is to roll out the 1090 model worldwide, fundamentally altering the global economy to eradicate poverty and inequality forever. Talk about an ambitious leverage of digital subscription metrics for a real-world political takeover.
So, we are left with a pretty profound question today. We've seen the sharp critique of paper independence and the very aggressive blueprint of this model, backed by a massive 10 crore digital mobilization strategy. But can a strict, mathematically driven approach, guaranteeing 10% direct wealth, giving 90% of resources to producers, and penalizing exploitation to zero, actually change the future economy? Can a formula truly rewrite how the world works and achieve what the author calls real economic independence? It's an absolutely fascinating concept to ponder. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the systems around you, and I'll see you next time.